it's great to be back here. We started our journey here, Advanced Network Phase 1, in 2012, autumn 2012. So really thanking Paul Broadhurst for hosting us again here today. And actually, we're a partnership. We're in Phase 1 and Phase 2, we're also expanding our partnership as well. It's great to have other partners here, such as Barbican Guildhall, represented by Sean today. My name's Surya Turner. I'm Director of Kumba Youth Music. And those who you don't know, Kumba is an organisation based in East London that works with young musicians. And we just seek to nurture talent, really. That's what we're about, trying to nurture talent in diverse communities. We do especially welcome Black and Asian young players, mostly strings at the moment, and we support them through bespoke programs. And for example, our Young Music Leadership Program, which Christina mentioned at the beginning, and Ayana's our mentor, one of the mentors for that, and we've got 2 other mentors in the room. And that program works with gifted and talented teenagers, really, from all instruments. And we also have our Kumba Club, which is a weekly program for those at the very beginning of their musical journeys, and that program works with parents and the young musicians in different ways. So, about 4 years ago, I was invited to a gathering at the Royal Academy of Music, and it came after the Elsa Stemmer had been, and there'd been lots of excitement about what Elsa Stemmer were doing, and Christina held this gathering. It was quite a small gathering, maybe 12 people in the room at the time, and I was one of those people, and we got to know each other, and she came to visit our young musicians in East London. She liked what she saw, and a partnership with the Royal Academy of Music began. At the same time, I also met Gary Crosby from Tomorrow's Warriors. Same thing, we got on, and a musical collaboration began. And eventually, the 3 of us, Gary, Christina, and myself, got together, convened our first of many meetings, and we held these gatherings, quite informal gatherings, really, for quite a long time. And we had wide-ranging conversations during these gatherings, usually at the South Bank Centre at the time. But a constant theme was diversity, was about how to nurture talent, was around excellence. And the 3 of us found these conversations really sort of stimulating. There were like conversations that we were not having elsewhere. And they were also challenging as well, looking at our own practice and how to develop our own practice. Our musicians at the same time were getting to know each other through musical collaborations, and it was really interesting seeing how their very different worlds were coming together, and how they were gaining sort of mutual sort of respect for each other and each of the different groups. Kumba at that time also hosted by the Academy, we held a forum which was bringing parents together with professionals. And again, that was a kind of different kind of conversation that we didn't have elsewhere. And parents really speaking very openly about their experience in music education, and professionals listening and talking about their experience as well. So all of that were kind of sowed the seeds really for what we're here today with Advanced Network. When Youth Music launched the module, we thought, great, we can now broaden the conversations we were having and include more people, include different kinds of experiences that we couldn't bring as just 3 organisations. And really, as a result, bring the issues of race out in the open. Create some energy around it, some momentum, and a renewed sense of possibility. That music education could be truly inclusive and could actually represent the communities that we live in. So I'll recap on what we did during Phase 1. Our theme was access all areas, and our first event, as I said, was called Here. And we had this theme of keys and doors. So our first event was called Finding the Keys. And what we were doing, we wanted to find out what are the barriers. Why is there an issue that beyond initial access, Black and minority young musicians are underrepresented in ensemble music making? And one moment that really stands in my mind, we had a young musician on the panel speaking, whose name was James. He's a cellist, and he's studying for masters at the Royal Academy at the moment. And he was speaking about some of the difficult experiences that he had had, and how the level of determination really that he needed to have to keep going. And we also had on the panel James Thomas, Hackney Music Service leader. And he, at the end of that, young James, let's call him, the end of when young James spoke, the senior James, older James, turned to him and just looked really thoughtfully and said, "You've just described my experience," and that was 20 years ago. And that moment really stands in my mind from that first event, because I thought that's why we're doing what we're doing. It demonstrated that, well, for me, it was very much around, well, do we want to keep having that same conversation 20 years hence, in 2034 or whatever? We want to have a different conversation. I think we need to move that conversation on, where we're no longer talking about why orchestras and conservatoires and our sort of youth ensembles are not representative or only draw from a certain section of the community. We want to look at the musical scene, I think, in 20 years' time and see it significantly more representative of the communities we live in. So we wanted to create this momentum, this even a movement of individuals who, through discussion, knowledge, connections, inspiration, could actually take those steps to bring about change. So in this venue, we held our first round of roundtable discussions, and we wanted to also create an environment where people felt more comfortable talking, about race. It felt like one of those things that people skirted around, but it was kind of difficult. And we just felt it was really important, first and foremost, that we created that environment where wherever you were on your sort of knowledge or journey or understanding, you felt able to contribute to that discussion. And I think we achieved that in the first event. I think suddenly, in the room, there felt like there was a lot of energy, and it just felt like a really friendly, comfortable, and exciting environment. It's a very important starting point. So after that we had our second event at the Royal Academy of Music, and this event we looked at what leaders had done in their organisations to bring about change. We had 3 organisations represented: Milap Fest, who's in Liverpool, Spitalfields Music, and our first presentation was from Nadia Stern, who's the CEO of Rambert Dance Company. And she spoke about the organisational and personal journey that she had to go on to transform Rambert. And it was really clear on that day from the presentations that diversity does and can fuel excellence. But change won't happen by itself. There needs to be some intention, strategy, and commitment. Even we discovered on that second event needing some courage and to sort of take some bold action, really. So we used also in that event, we used action learning as a methodology for the roundtables, where individuals were able to look at their context and think about the next steps and be supported by their peers to ask questions as well. And we're going to hear more about action learning later on. And our third and final event in that sort of phase was at the South Bank Centre. And it was much more eclectic, I would say. We had a range of different speakers. Arts Council was represented, and we're really pleased that Arts Council, through Adam Jeans, is represented again today. I think it's their third appearance with us. As you may know, Helen Sprott was due to be here, but through the train complications that are going on and the tube strikes, she had to arrange some meetings. But Adam really heroically stepped in at the last minute and did so with such enthusiasm, actually, and positivity that we're really, really happy that you were able to do that. At that last event, we had Melitza Robson from the Arts Council, and she spoke about their current position on diversity. And today, I think Adam's going to speak about, update us really, particularly in the very fast-moving world of music education. We had other speakers at that event. We had CEO of London Philharmonic, who shared a presentation with Mark Pemberton from the Association of British Orchestras, Marshall Marcus, many of you know, from El Sistema Europe, and the race equality think tank Money Me Trust. And there were different views, I would say, at that event on the scale of the issue or the problem, and therefore the pace of change that we needed to embark on. But I still think there was a general consensus that some change was needed, and therefore action was needed. Alongside all the events, we've had research, which really the focus was on that year one was around gathering stories, finding out whatever statistics there were on the theme, and Beverly Mason did a very difficult, courageous job, I would say, in trying to look at all of that, bringing people together, but also trying to untangle some of these statistics and make sense of them. So I'm really pleased that she's here with us today to update us on that phase one research. And she's also joined by Graham Welch, who knowledge, I've met with Graham a few times, and his knowledge of music education and his passion for the subject is really inspiring. So he's going to be taking us forward, supporting the research in phase two. So really pleased to be hearing a bit about that today as well. So we had the research, we gathered lots of stories, we had lots of roundtable discussions, we had great musicians, fantastic speakers in that phase one, and then we sort of sat together and just thought, okay, what next? And we felt at the Advanced Network sort of team, if you like, that we needed to take some bold steps. Bold but natural steps. And that included for us ongoing conversations like the one we're hopefully going to have today in the roundtables, but also some action, as Paul mentioned earlier. Action that's kind of fueled by a spirit of inquiry or curiosity, that is supported, action that's supported by a network or a community, and where there is some form of commitment involved. So curiosity, community, and commitment are the three words I've got in my head. And I was thinking about the word commitment, because I think people relate to that word in different ways. But I was thinking of it in terms of it's about being prepared to be counted, really, as an organisation or an individual that recognises that the importance of this work and is prepared to invest some time, as you're doing already today by being here, energy, resources into making that difference. But doing so in a way that your organisation benefits directly, and also you as an individual organisation feel that you're growing through the process. So I've got this quote on my wall, which kind of reminds me of what I'm doing. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful and committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And that's a quote by Margaret Mead, the anthropologist. And I think that's a guiding principle, really, of Advanced Network Phase 2, creating a community of thoughtful individuals who want to create positive change. And on our panel today, really pleased to have Ruth Cook, because Ruth's life's work, really, is around supporting small groups of thoughtful individuals around the world who are trying to bring about positive change. So she's going to talk a little bit about what she does, action learning, the method of that, and why she's dedicated as well, I imagine, that kind of time to do that. So thoughtful community, and we want people to share their knowledge and experiences. We did become aware in phase one that there's a number of organisations who are already doing some things around diversity and inclusion, who are looking at it in different ways. There are others who want to do something but not necessarily knowing quite where to start or what the action is that will make that specific difference. Others had events or had projects that had produced great results or mixed results. And we just thought amazing to pull that information, that experience together as a network, so we can all benefit from it. But in order to do that, we need structures and a positive context. So taking action phase 2 is around creating these supportive structures, and we're going to be using professional development tools to support us in doing so, action learning and action research. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. So being bold, I'll come back to being bold. We need to be bold initially, I think, to make that commitment to start the process. And we want to do that with curiosity and thoughtfulness. But it's also really vital that we take steps that are practical and relevant to the situation, the context we're in now. So I think that's quite an interesting mix. I was thinking about this. On the one hand, we want bold vision and inquiry. On the other hand, we've got to be really practical and realistic about what's possible, particularly with all the pressures and that going on. And I think that holding those two things is interesting. And I was thinking about how that plays out in an individual's life, to kind of hold those two quite different ways of being. And I'm very pleased to invite Sean Gregory, actually, to speak, because he's probably one of the busiest guys in the sector, one of them, and he has to, I imagine, he can correct me, but I imagine he has to hold that vision of where the Barbican's going, as well as the sort of day-to-day running of the institution. A very complex institution as well. So I think it'd be really interesting to hear how he does that and the kind of tools and the support that he has in place to make that happen. So our speakers will be introducing the theme of action, taking action phase 2 in different ways, different elements of it, and really helping us to bring out that kind of the elements of that overarching question, which is what does it take to bring about change, personally and organisationally. And we'll be processing all of this in the roundtables. And the roundtables are really important, I think, to kind of ground some of this in multiple experiences that when we sit together. And finally, after the roundtables, we'll be coming back and I'll be sharing a little bit about how you can get involved. There are applications and in your programme as well, there's more details about the programme, so do have a look at those. But I'll be sharing more about that, and also there'll be opportunity for questions as well. So I think at that point, I'm going to hand over to Hilary, who's our very dynamic and skillful chair. She's been with us from the very beginning, and she's going to be leading the next phase. So thank you very much, Hilary.
Thank you.